Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start today's video with a story about standing your ground, even when it means upsetting family. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Rear-wheel drive truck versus icy roads. Sister learned the hard way. My sister and I used to be neighbors, so to speak. I live in a sub-building rented from my parents, and she lived in a fifth-wheel trailer with her kids next to it. On Christmas Day about 3 years ago, she and her visiting ex-husband, along with their kids, were outside having fun in the snow. I went outside to hang out with them, and at a random point, my sister suddenly asked me to later take her to meet a friend of hers because they were alone with no family on Christmas. I didn't want to do this because not only did I not know this person, but I know my sister well. If I were to have been her ride, I'd have been stuck waiting there for hours. When she wanted me to do this sort of thing for her back then, it was because she wanted to drink and couldn't have alcohol if she drove herself. It was also snowing and the roads were covered. I didn't want to risk it. My truck is a 98 rear-wheel drive Ford F-150, and I had no change for the tires. It's a heavy steel beast that could slip off the road very easily. I tend to call it a brick with wheels. I relayed all of that information to my sister, but she still got angry at me for not agreeing. And she couldn't mentally understand that her front-wheel drive car would be better on the snow-covered country roads than my truck. But I couldn't drive her with her car anyway because it was a manual, and I drive automatic. She kept acting like my vehicle would do better because it's a truck. I explained that if it were a 4x4, then yes, but it's rear-wheel drive, which means it's both heavy and got no front power to help keep traction on the road. So it'd slip and slide and likely wouldn't even be able to make it back up the hill. Her car was smaller, lighter, she had chains and traction control. I also have very little experience driving on icy and snowy roads. She basically scoffed and walked away, and I hoped she'd let it go. She didn't. After having fun in the snow, we went over to our parents' house and celebrated Christmas Day. My sister didn't speak of wanting me to drive her to see that guy I don't know while in front of our parents because she knew they'd tell her to leave me alone. But I got an occasional dirty look from her if we made eye contact, and when our parents weren't in earshot, she'd make a jab at me about how she'd do something like that for me if I needed it, and I should be doing it for her. But I didn't relent. My sister started drinking, probably in the hopes that she could try and guilt me by saying she was too inebriated to drive, but I didn't relent. As she drank more, her glares towards me kept getting nastier. That's what she used to do to get her way from me. She'd act increasingly bitter and treat me like the bad guy till I caved. Not that time. Anything related to vehicle danger, I have a pretty shiny spine about. So I just let her glare at me. By the time the party was almost over, she'd obviously realized her spike gambit didn't work, so she hopped her drunk self into her car and took off, even though she was drunk and shouldn't have been driving. She'd gotten a DUI a couple years prior, so she knew better. She just didn't care. Thankfully, her ex took the kids to his house for a few days, so I wasn't worried about my nephews. I told my parents what my sister had tried to make me do, and they were pretty angry about it too and backed me up on my decision to say no. Not only because the roads were treacherous, but because it really wasn't fair to me to keep driving her places just so she could get drunk. If she really had so much pity for this guy to visit him for a couple hours on Christmas, she could have done it sober. As I said before, I didn't know this guy she wanted to visit, and my sister just wanted an excuse to drink with a friend. As I said before, I didn't know this guy she wanted to visit, and my sister just wanted an excuse to go drink with a friend. And if I'd taken her, I'd have just been waiting around for her for hours. My sister has no sense of being on someone else's time, especially when she drank. Time to go meant almost nothing to her. She could almost never stick to a deadline if alcohol was involved. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with her anymore. Later on, I was taking a nap when I was woken up to what sounded like my sister's car alarm. I looked out the window and saw a large truck I didn't recognize leaving her driveway. I went over and knocked on her door to ask what was going on. She was particularly moody, and I doubt she was able to drink for the hours she was away, with what I learned later. I asked her whose truck I saw, and she angrily told me it was her lonely friend I didn't take her to see. and he drove home behind her to make sure she didn't crash. I asked if the roads were really that bad, and she confirmed they were. I said it was a good thing I didn't try to drive my truck on them then, and she very passive-aggressively said, yeah, before spitefully bidding me goodbye for the evening and slamming the door. I learned the next day that my sister had gone off the road and crashed, messed up her passenger side fender pretty bad, and she had to call the guy she was going to see to come pull her out of the ditch. And then he had to help her get home once she'd calmed down. So she got a fair dose of karma that day. I felt most sorry for her car, though. She absolutely destroyed that car in the few years she owned it. That fender was just one of many things to get broken because of her reckless driving. Thankfully, my sister doesn't live here anymore. We evicted her toxic self in late 2023, and she's extremely bitter we won't help her anymore. I wish people would see this as karma when things happen to them. Instead, she probably blames you for the crash because she wanted you to drive her. Honestly, this is one of those stories where standing your ground not only saved you a dangerous night, but ended up showing everyone, including your sister, just how reckless she was being. One front yard, one contract, 500% markup, and months of chaos. I've always hated mowing the lawn. At the same time, I don't want to be that neighbor, so I do my best to stay on top of the lawn. However, while I started out strong this summer, I had a series of medical issues that left me in a state that mowing was a bit too much than I could handle. Add in a few other excuses on the few remaining times I could mow, the lawn was making me look like I was the neighbor I didn't want to be. I decided I'd pay someone to mow for a change and then pick it back up once it was back under control. My first mistake was when the company I contacted had advertised a one-time cut, but when calling to schedule service, notified me they have a 3-cut minimum. I should have backed out then. I didn't. The first mower showed up and canceled the mowing, claiming my lawn was 100% over 23 inches and as such for excessive height, and proceeded to list that they'd charge me a 500% markup for the service. The photos taken were of the few higher points in the lawn, all my front yard, with a tape measure you couldn't read the numbers off of. I was annoyed, to say the least, and I tried to originally cancel here, but hit with a whole new contract bid. So I told them I'd mow it, and I'd just use them to end the season and take it easy. I actually only mowed the front lawn, and even then not the whole lawn. Miraculously, 2 weeks later, the mower showed up, did the whole lawn, and somehow didn't see the backyard that I left untouched. It was a problem. The next mowing day came and went, and no one showed, so I reported it and canceled the mowing through the app. Despite canceling, someone showed up the following day. I'm annoyed, and I want out, so I go into the app and try to cancel my service again. It looks like the service was canceled, and I saved screenshots. Then today I get a message saying my mower's on the way. Here's the thing. We've had a drought for the last month or so. It's the end of the season, and my lawn hasn't grown even a half inch in the last 2 weeks. I am beyond furious at this point. I wait until the guy shows up. I talk to him. He's a great guy. He's a contractor for this booking company, which is what I thought was the case. He tells me he gets this all the time. He lets me know he's going to send a message to the company. I felt bad as time got wasted, but there wasn't much I could do about that. An hour later, I get a message showing I'm rescheduled for tomorrow. I'm done. So I call them up, and after speaking with one agent, I get to the escalation team. He tells me my service is canceled, but I still have one mowing as per the contract. We go back and forth for a bit, and he won't budge. I ask him if he'd schedule snow removal in the middle of summer, so why should I schedule mowing when it isn't needed? Nothing. Fine, schedule me for June in 2047. June when, sir? June 4th, 2047. I'm sure I'll need my lawn mowed then. We can't schedule that far in advance. He's insistent it has to be this or next year, but I keep pushing, and I remind him that I agreed to a 3-cut minimum, and nowhere in any of the conversations did the company specific a restriction on when. So I wanted to schedule it on June 4th, 2047, and he needed to schedule it happen. One moment, sir, while I talk to support. I wait for another few minutes, and then he comes back. Your service is fully canceled. No one is coming out. Reminds me of a joke that Reagan told. A man in the Soviet Union applies for a car at the local bureau office. The gentleman at the counter tells him to retrieve the car in 10 years and gives him an appointment date. The man asks, morning or afternoon? It's in 10 years. What does it matter the time of day? Well, because the plumber's coming in the morning. And our last story. And our next story. How my neighbor tried to reclaim land. I grew up in a little desert town where property's cheap, everyone knows everyone, and drama spreads faster than tumbleweeds. About 5 years ago, my neighbor and family friend Miguel bought a huge plot of land just outside of beach town. It was perfect, big enough to split into 2 sections, build a summer house, and still have plenty of room for gardens and storage. The land cost just under $200,000, and Miguel put a big down payment on it with plans to finish paying it off in installments. The seller, a woman named Karen, was thrilled to unload it, or so she said. Miguel had a rock-solid contract, notarized, signed by both of them, everything done by the book. For a while, it was smooth sailing. Then the city paved the dusty road leading to the property, and everything changed. Overnight, property values skyrocketed. That's when Karen apparently realized she'd sold too cheap and decided she wanted the land back. At first, she tried being nice about it, asking Miguel if he'd be willing to reverse the sale if she gave him back what he'd paid so far. When he said no, she got nasty. The threats started. "You can't build here anymore. The contract's invalid. I'll take you to court." Miguel stopped paying the monthly installments until things were resolved. "If she wants to play games," he told my mom, "she can sit and stew without my money." Things hit a boiling point when Miguel and his wife went to Karen's house to try to talk like adults. Instead of a civil conversation, Karen came storming out the front door screaming that she'd call the police and have them removed. According to Miguel, she had a knife in her hand, not waving it, but holding it where everyone could see it. When they turned to leave, she followed them down the walkway, shouting insults until Miguel picked up a 2x4 from the ground and warned her to back off. That was the last time anyone tried to talk to her in person. The legal fight dragged on for nearly 2 years. Miguel attended multiple hearings in the little town courthouse while Karen kept throwing up roadblocks, filing complaints, and claiming she was the real owner. And then, about a year after the sale, she did something truly wild. She moved onto the property. No, really, she hired some guys and built a little shack, smaller than most bathrooms, smack in the middle of the land. It had a tin roof, plywood walls, and a padlock on the door. She even put up a cheap lawn chair and a mailbox like she was staking a claim. Then she went around town telling everyone, "See, that land is still mine. I built there first." What Karen didn't count on was cameras. Several neighbors had security systems pointed at the road, and the county even had traffic cameras because of the new paving project. The footage was crystal clear. The lot was empty until a full year after the sale, and then construction started, complete with Karen directing the workers. By the time the final court date came around, Miguel was ready. Karen strutted into the courthouse with a folder of papers and announced that she had proof that Miguel never really bought the land. She produced a single-page contract with only her own signature on it, claiming Miguel never signed anything and therefore the property was still hers. Miguel calmly handed over the Rio contract, a triple-signed, notarized, and registered with the county clerk. The judge compared them and raised an eyebrow. Then came the good part. Miguel's lawyer produced the camera footage showing the shack being built a full year after the sale. The judge watched the whole thing silently, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am," the judge said, "you are claiming this structure existed prior to the sale, yet we have time-stamped footage showing you building it almost a year later. How do you explain this?" Karen stammered something about maintenance and repairs, but it didn't fly. Then Miguel's lawyer played the video from the day Karen had confronted Miguel with the knife. The courtroom went quiet, except for Karen's own voice screaming threats on the recording. By the time Karen took the stand, she was completely unraveling. She contradicted herself so many times, the judge finally had to stop her. "Enough," the judge said, slamming the gavel. "This court rules in favor of Mr. Ramirez. The land belongs solely to him." The judgment was brutal. Miguel didn't have to pay the remaining $60,000 balance, meaning he got the land for way under its new market value. Karen had 30 days to remove the shack and any personal belongings, or Miguel could claim them as his own. She was ordered to pay both sets of legal fees, more than $30,000 combined. She was fined another $20,000 for the attempted assault, with a warning that any future harassment would mean jail time. Karen screamed that the judge was corrupt and had been bought off, but the bailiff threatened her with contempt, and she finally stormed out. 30 days passed and Karen never came back for the shack, so Miguel rented a bulldozer, invited a bunch of neighbors over, and turned it into a demolition party. They knocked the shack flat in minutes, sold the scrap wood and metal, and used the cash to buy ribs, beer, and fireworks. Today, Miguel's summer house sits right where Karen's shack once stood. Knowing that Karen ended up broke, embarrassed, and legally banned from ever stepping foot near that land again makes every visit just a little sweeter. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.